Hello everybody, my name is Elliot Geltz and today I have a very special video. This marks the end of Attack on Titan. The final episode of a very long-running, very important anime series recently aired. I believe it was just yesterday. The final episode aired in Japan and will be arriving to Western audiences subbed and dubbed shortly. Oh boy! I honestly don't know what to say about that. Like, Attack on Titan is one of those series that I always felt was going to be with us. Like, I knew in my mind it was going to end eventually one day, especially once the ending of the manga finally arrived. I just felt in my heart this was always going to be there. It's been here for well over a decade. Just Attack on Titan was this thing that was happening for so long. It feels strange. It feels strange to be at this point where it is now a complete series from beginning to end, and it's this whole unit we can discuss and look back on. That, wow, like, this isn't very well worded or dramatic. It's just, wow. So this video is not about my feelings on the series. For reference, I like it a great deal. I think it has its faults. But overall, I do genuinely love this series for what it is and what it does well. And what it does well, I think it does very well. It just has some trip-ups along the way that I'll probably discuss in a different video. But this video is not that video. This video is the complete timeline of Attack on Titan. From the very beginning of its history and its own narrative to the very end that we get in that final episode. Or the final chapter, if you're a manga reader. A lot of people, myself included, fell off over the years and had to catch back up. Some people may have watched that final episode and been confused about some things that happened and why they happened, or they forgot important plot points that came and went over the years. So I'm making this video to have the complete timeline in a single, concise place, so that anyone that fell off or forgot things or whatever can get fully caught up on the main plot of what happens and why the events of the series finale happen the way they do. So, taking it from the top, Attack on Titan starts 2,000 years prior to the events of its first episode/chapter. A long time ago, a slave girl named Ymir, living in a country called Eldia, was running away from her captors. And in running away, she stumbled upon this massive tree that was so large it had a cavern carved and worked through its body that she ran into for safety. In running into the tree's cavern, she fell into a body of water. And in that water, she encountered something. What this thing is, whether it's an organism or something else, is highly debated in universe, and it's not something we have a 100% definitive answer to. She meets this jellyfish centipede type thing that will come to be referenced to as the literal devil. It and Ymir, by extension, as gods, or more scientific answers. We get all sorts of answers as to what this thing is. We don't know specifically what. But whatever it is, it fuses to Ymir and makes her into the first Titan. The eponymous, what the whole series is named after, she's the first Titan. This grants her a whole bunch of supernatural abilities. From making her body supermassive to manipulating the earth and shaping it and forming it in different ways to all sorts of things. With these powers, Ymir is drafted into serving Eldia, from using her powers to build bridges and roads and other infrastructure, to fighting in wars as a military weapon for Eldia. In all sorts of ways, her powers are used to bolster Eldia on the world stage. For this service, she is rewarded, I'm going to put reward in big air quotes, she is rewarded by the king of Eldia, King Fritz, by him taking her as his concubine, which, if you're unfamiliar with history, is basically a lady that a king or an emperor just takes as a sex slave, and it's very not fun. And it's kind of funny. I see the wikis and other sources cite this event as, oh, he takes her as his wife, and then the other sources as he takes her as his concubine. And just that one little shift in descriptive language, and all of a sudden this is a wildly different event. Regardless, King Fritz takes Ymir, and together they have 3 children. And during this time, Ymir also continues serving as both a military weapon and building up Eldia's infrastructure. 13 years after she was first fused with the jellyfish centipede thing that gave her her Titan powers, an assassination attempt was made on King Fritz, and Ymir stepped in to save his life at the cost of her own. To avoid having the Titan powers lost, King Fritz ordered his daughters to cannibalize their mother's corpse. How he thought that would work, or why he thought that was related to Titan powers in any way, no idea. But it did work, and Ymir's powers split between her 3 daughters. And then that process continued to their children. When they died, their children cannibalized them, further dividing the power until we had 9. They are 9 different splits of Ymir's power, owned by people that can at will turn into a Titan, named Titan Shifters. The Titan Shifter powers are as such. We have the Founding Titan, the Armored Titan, the Attack Titan, the Beast Titan, the Cart Titan, the Colossal Titan, the Female Titan, the Jaw Titan, and the Warhammer Titan. Now, it is important to note that those names were not given by the Fritz royal family at this time or anyone present then. Those names are attributed to these 9 powers by our protagonists in the modern day as they encounter them based on the foremost attribute they first see. So what made these powers special are not necessarily reflective of their names. It's not like one of the royal houses got the Cart Titan and saw it for the first time and went, aha, behold, the power of carts. The Female Titan is not just, oh, it's a Titan, but female. There are different things and powers unique to each of the shifter abilities. The Female Titan has something that makes it special. It's called that because when the protagonists in the modern day first see it, it is owned by a woman who is using it, and so its attributes are more female than it would be otherwise. So with that out of the way, continuing with the history, Eldia used the 9 Titan Shifters to conquer every country they could find and became a menace to the entire rest of the world over the course of over a millennia and a half. These years are known as the Great Titan War, the first quarter of our narrative. So, these wars were very much not really wars. They were more like exterminations. With the power of the Titans, Eldia conquered everything in their wake. No one could lift a hand against them. This continued, like I said, for over a millennia and a half, until one day King Karl Fritz, a descendant of the original King Fritz, came to the throne. Now, Karl Fritz felt very guilty about his nation's history, partly because he opened a history textbook at any point in his life, and also because he was receiving visions and memories from his ancestors of what they had done. This is because of a phenomenon called paths. Now, paths are these transcendental connections between all Eldians. Everyone that is a descendant of Ymir, from her first 3 daughters to their children, and over the years spreading throughout the entirety of the Eldian population. Every single one of them is connected by paths, capital P, paths, to every other Eldian. And something that can happen with these paths is that the memories and sights and etc. of your ancestors or even people from the future can all of a sudden just come at you in the middle of your day. That is something that happens very rarely, and it's typically attributed to like a waking nightmare or some other more common phenomena, but it's paths. It's paths letting you see the past and the future of other Eldians. And Carl Fritz was seeing all of the awful, awful stuff his ancestors had done, and he felt bad about it. So he devised a plan. At this point, the 9 different Titan shifters were divided across 9 royal houses, each house having a Titan shifter power that it passed on from user to user down its bloodline. The Fritz house, the royal house, the kings of Eldia, had the founding Titan. The founding Titan is special because it can control every other Titan. It can just enact literal, deliberate, 100% control over another. Now, over the course of all this conquest, the royal houses were bickering and would devolve into infighting, but the control of the founding Titan would always rein them in. Carl Fritz conspired with House Tiber, the royal house in charge of the Warhammer Titan, and Marley, a nation Eldia had conquered and terrorized. And the 3 of them together conspired for the following events to take place. Carl Fritz would lead all of the Eldians in a retreat to a place called Paradise Island. House Tiber would secede from Eldia to Marley and take the Warhammer Titan with them. With Carl Fritz's founding Titan gone and Tiber seceding to Marley, all of the remaining royal houses also seceded while also falling to infighting and growing significantly weaker. This left Eldia significantly weakened, and it was very easy for Marley and other nations that it had conquered to fight back. On Paradise Island, Carl Fritz used the founding Titan's power to raise up a countless number of colossal Titans, and then built a city with 3 concentric walls, circular walls dividing it up, and surrounding it with these colossal Titans inside those walls. Fritz then gave an ultimatum to the world saying, hey, we're done with our conquering nonsense. We just want to be left alone in peace. Stay away from us. If you attack us, you'll crack open the walls and the colossal Titans will destroy the world. That was his ultimatum to the world to get them to leave Eldia alone. However, this was just a bluff. The colossal Titans would never activate if not for the founding Titan's power. And Fritz then used the founding Titan's power to strip the memories of all of his subjects and swore a binding oath of non-aggression so that nobody, even if they inherited the founding Titan, could activate the Colossi. It was this massive bluff to get the rest of the world to leave his people alone and to get his people to stay in ignorance of the rest of the world, where they had forgotten all the wars they had waged, all of their history, and they came to believe they had lived in the walled city for forever, and that Titans had destroyed the rest of the world. This did not work very well, as we will get to. But this is the political landscape the series starts with 100 years after Carl Fritz built his city. The Fritz family and most of the Eldians are inside the walled city. House Tiber and every other royal house except for the house that owned the Attack Titan are with Marley. Marley has not let go of their grudge against Eldia and is more than willing to attack the walled city, and they also have a population of captive Eldians who either didn't want to secede or wanted to keep fighting, or did secede and expected to be treated better, but now there's a population of Eldians in Marley that are treated as second-class citizens and horribly and all sorts of things. And that is the setup of the world 100 years prior to the start of the series, leading up to the very first episode / chapter of Attack on Titan. With King Fritz's retreat to his city, his ultimatum, and all of that, that marks the end of the Great Titan War. Now, this brings us to an event called the Operation on Paradise Island. As I said, the nation of Marley did not let go of its grudge against Eldia as easily as Karl Fritz had hoped. However, they were fearful of Karl's ultimatum. Even though he was just bluffing, they didn't know that. They sincerely believed that if they outright assaulted the walled city, Karl Fritz would use the Founding Titan, or whoever the reigning king was, would use the Founding Titan to unleash the colossal titans in the walls and destroy the world. So, to that end, they developed a plan to extract the Founding Titan and the Attack Titan, the only shifter powers not in Marley's possession, from inside the walled city. Now, as I said, there was an Eldian population that had remained behind and were being kept as second-class citizens in Marley. Out of that population, Marley chose children that they would raise up to be child soldiers, in part upon with the Titan shifter powers they did possess, and then send those child soldiers to Paradise Island to enact an attack that would let them infiltrate the population in the chaos afterwards, and from there join the military, move up in the ranks, get closer to the nobility, and then locate and extract, through kidnapping or whatever, whoever is in possession of the two Titan shifters in Eldia. Now, those children were Annie Leonhardt, Berthold Hoover, Rainer Braun, Zeke Yeager, Marcel Galliard, and Pike. Her last name is Pike Finger, but she's almost never referred to as such. It's kind of treated as if her name is Pike. She's weird. Anyway, these 6 were given Titan shifter powers, trained for a certain number of years, and then sent to Paradise Island to approach the walled city covertly, attack it in their Titan forms, unleash pure Titans on the city, and in the confusion, infiltrate the population. Now, a key part of this plan is the presence of pure Titans. And begs the question, what the hell are those? They are the monstrous, mindless, shambling creatures that we first see that are the main antagonists for the majority of the story. These are Eldian civilians from Marley's second-class citizens, who have been injected with Titan spinal fluid. This process causes them to undergo a horrific transformation into the monstrous, mindless creatures we see and that the series is so famous for. Over the course of the century, from Karl Fritz building his city to the present day, whenever an Eldian would get a little uppity or get rebellious or be a part of any covert operations against Marley, Marley would drag them to Paradise Island, inject them, and throw them on the shore so that they would become a pure Titan that would then go on to terrorize the walled city. A big part of the plan of the infiltrators is to use them against the walled city in a very overt manner. Now, here we have a very, very shitty drawing of mine to represent the walls. We have Wall Sina, the innermost that protects the royal capital. Wall Rose, which is the middlemost wall and protects the market districts, the merchant class, all that. And then Wall Maria, the outermost wall that protects everything. And in that massive area protected by Wall Maria is the city's agricultural endeavors and things like that, the more rural areas. Now, alongside Wall Maria is a little town called Shiganshina. The plan of the infiltrators was fourfold. One of them was going to go into Titan form and carry the children by hand across the breadth of the island to the walled city. From there, Berthold would transform into the Colossus Titan and kick in the exterior-most wall leading into Shiganshina from the exterior of the city. Through that gap, Annie would use the powers of the female Titan to draw pure Titans in so that they could flood that gap and cause as much destruction and mayhem as possible, giving Reiner a chance to infiltrate the chaos, turn into the armored Titan inside the town of Shiganshina, and smash the gate between the town and the area protected by the exterior-most wall, letting the Titans continue their blind charge through and start to flood this area, causing rampant destruction. It cannot be overstated how awful this attack would be. Not only would the town of Shiganshina be destroyed, but Titans would be freely roaming this countryside. It looks small because of my drawing. This area is like the land area of Spain. It's the size of a European country, this city. It is a very large amount of land. So all of the people that would be inhabiting the area here, farming for the sake of the Cité de Briaretu, would be terrorized by these Titans, be killed by them, and the entire population of the city would start to go hungry as famine took hold, because again, this is all of their farmland, and all of it has been rendered uninhabitable because the attack has unleashed all these Titans on it. Now, when the children arrive, something goes wrong. A pure Titan manages to sneak up on the group and attack them, almost getting a hold of Reiner. However, Marcel Galliard pushes him out of the way and is eaten in his stead by this pure Titan. As far as the infiltrators are concerned, they just watch their best friend die, and for some reason this pure Titan just dropped dead. They have no idea why. All they know is they're really upset about it, but they have a mission to go and do, so they push through and go to do that. We're going to put them aside for a second, because what just happened is very important. That pure Titan was once a woman named Ymir, named after the original Ymir 2,000 years ago. She was an Eldian in Marley who got wrapped up in all sorts of events, and Marley punished her by making her a pure Titan and throwing her on Paradise Island 60 years prior. She'd been wandering the island as a pure Titan for 60 years, in what she described later on as a walking nightmare. Eating Marcel, who was the user of the Jaw Titan, eating him brought her to a place full of stars and radiant paths that she had no idea where she was. We do know where she was. She was in a place called the Coordinate. Now, the paths that I said connect all Eldians. At certain points in reference to certain people or places or events, multiple paths will converge, and this creates a point called a coordinate. Coordinates have very intense supernatural effects on Eldians and the physical world. In the same way paths create these phenomena where Eldians will see the memories of their ancestors or descendants, or other such crazy shit. Coordinates are where that kind of gets cranked up to 11. And a pure Titan, by sheer chance, coming across a Titan shifter and managing to eat them is very much an event important enough to be related to a coordinate. So when Ymir eats one, that's where she wakes up, in this transcendental place related to the past. Now, once she wakes up from being in the coordinate, she wakes up back in the real world, just in a random field, as a normal woman with the Jaw Titan's powers. This reveals to us, the reader / viewer, that the goal of pure Titans, the reason they mindlessly chase humans and eat them, is not for nourishment, as is established earlier in the series. They do not get any sustenance from it. They don't have a proper digestive system. Their stomach is just this empty sack that fills up with corpses, and once it gets full, they vomit them all out and continue eating people. The reason they are so relentlessly chasing and eating people is in the instinctive hope of eating a Titan shifter, which will both grant them the shifter's powers and also free them from the curse of being a pure Titan, as it did with Ymir. The infiltrators have no way of knowing that. The only thing relevant to them is that one of their best friends died, and now they have to adapt the plan because Marcel, as the Jaw Titan, was going to be the one to carry them to the wall. In the wake of that, Annie steps up and becomes the female Titan. Well, she was already the female Titan, but she pops her female Titan form and carries the kids to the wall. By the time she gets there, she blacks out from exhaustion, having covered a very significant distance non-stop in Titan form as a literal child. Now, that creates a very significant problem for the infiltrators. Because one, they have to watch over Annie and make sure she's safe. And two, if you'll remember my breakdown of their attack plan, Annie using her powers to draw in other Titans was a big part of their assault. Berthold would kick in the door, but Annie was the one to draw in pure Titans to flood the hole, get into the town, and sow chaos, so Reiner could get in and do his thing, smashing the inner gate. Because because Annie couldn't do that, they relied on Pike, the owner of the Cart Titan, to shift and go around collecting pure Titans to bring to the wall to fulfill the plan. This was significantly less effective than the original plan would have been, and therefore fewer overall pure Titans flooded the town initially. That is important to note because when we see the events of the assault on Shiganshina in the first episode / first chapter of the manga, it is devastating. There is so much death and destruction, and it is very honestly terrifying to think that it could have been way worse. Like, the vast majority of Shiganshina gets killed in this attack, and the remainder are driven off as refugees. It is not impossible to think that, like, the vast majority, like a high 90 percentile of all the people in this town could have all been wiped out in this one attack if this one thing had gone more in line with the infiltrators' plan. And as we'll see later on, a great deal of the operation on Paradise Island comes down to very slight incidental decisions and events that end up having a much bigger impact than you would initially suspect. So, the assault on Shiganshina goes not as planned, but very well for the infiltrators. They successfully crack both the exterior wall and the inner gate. They all successfully integrate with the population of the refugees. And other than the hiccups with Annie and Marcel, everything is going according to plan. Obviously, it is in this attack that Eren Yeager, the protagonist of the story, loses his mother, loses his home, loses everything, and develops his hatred of the Titans as a force. However, we're not going to be following Eren just yet. We're still going to be following the story of the infiltrators, because this is overall the operation on Paradise Island they're conducting. That is most important to the plot. So, moving on. The infiltrators, specifically Annie, Berthold, and Reiner, infiltrate the populace of refugees and go on to join the military training corps with a bunch of other young adults that once they come of age, because lots and lots of kids that lost family and their homes in Shiganshina want to do something about it and feel either inspired or vengeful enough to join the military for it. However, the infiltrators' plan is to do very well, qualify for the military police, get into the capital, and continue their search for the two Titan shifters. However, a few years after the attack on Shiganshina, they plan to do the same thing again at Wall Rose with a town named Trost. Trost being very similar to Shiganshina in that it is a wall on the exterior, or is a town on the exterior wall, with a part of the capital W wall forming the town's wall, and the same plan of Bertolt kicking in the wall, and then Reiner smashing the interior gate once there's enough confusion would service propagating more Titans infiltrating deeper into the city, causing more destruction, causing more chaos, occupying the officials in the military more to keep their eyes away from the infiltrators. However, when they engaged this plan to attack Trost in the same way they did Shiganshina, they encounter an unforeseen development in that a Titan appears and begins attacking the pure Titans that are walking in through the open gate. This Titan turns out to be Eren, activating his powers as a Titan shifter for the first time. This throws the infiltrators far aback. They had no idea Eren was a Titan shifter or that the Titan shifter would be anyone other than the royal family or people close to them. They assumed the shifter powers would be kept close to hand. For some reason, this random kid from a Hodunk exterior town has at least one, if not both, of the Titan shifter powers. And given that they're there to take the founding Titan, which can control any other Titan, and they don't know whether or not Eren has that power, they abandon the attack on Trost, they fall back. I don't believe Reiner even makes an appearance as the armored Titan in this attack, because they're too afraid of Eren potentially popping off the powers of the Founder Titan and taking control of them and totally wrecking the operation. This turns out to be a horrible mistake. Eren is not even in his right mind and in control of himself, let alone able to activate the more transcendental and higher powers of his Titan shifter abilities. So they easily could have neutralized him and absconded with him and completed their mission to at least some extent, if not all of it, but they had no way of knowing that. And unfortunately for them, they made the wrong choice that looked like the right choice, and they abandoned the attack on Trost. Eren then goes on to work with the Survey Corps to use a large boulder to block the gap in Wall Rose and resecure Trost, marking the first time the human civilization inside the walls has ever recovered land conquered by the Titans in their war. Now, another development is going to occur that, unfortunately for the infiltrators, hampers their plans. After the failed attack on Trost, they make the decision to split up. Annie, with her high marks and training, goes on to join the military police, the police that patrol the capital where the wealthy live and live the high life. So that if Eren does not have both Titan shifter powers, she can continue her investigations there to find whichever one he doesn't have. Meanwhile, Reiner and Bertholdt join the Survey Corps to stay close to Eren because they know at least one of the shifter powers they're here for is with him. However, emboldened by the reconquest of Trost and the pushing back of the Titans, the Survey Corps launched their 57th expedition. Normally, these expeditions would go beyond Wall Maria to investigate and scout out the rest of Paradis Island. However, this expedition is to investigate and scout out the area inside Wall Maria for the Survey Corps to look for places they can stash supplies, build strongholds, and try to get a foothold in pushing back the Titans back out past the exterior wall. The infiltrators make the very brash decision that since Eren is going on this expedition, it would be a fantastic time to capture him. He will be out active in the field, distant from any other Survey Corps members, is wide open space where Titans would have the advantage on humans using 3D maneuver gear. Almost every condition and thing in their favor that they could ask for in terms of trying to capture Eren will be in effect during this expedition. So instead of biding their time, waiting for a better opportunity, continuing to search for the other Titan shifter, if there is one, they make the choice to go ahead and launch an attempt to capture Eren. Annie is the one to manifest as her female Titan, and attack the Survey Corps trying to get a hold of Eren. But unfortunately for her, she fails. Not only does she fail to capture Eren, being defeated in battle by Levi and Mikasa, she is more or less outed as the female Titan. From not killing Armin to looking like herself. Mikasa, in the meeting to discuss who the female Titan could be, Mikasa literally raises her hand and says, "I think it looks like Annie." And it does. With her big nose and her blonde hair, it does look like Annie. They put all their chips on this square and they lost. Because Annie is all but outed as the female Titan because of this failed attack. The Survey Corps sets a trap for Annie, which she falls into, and desperate to get out of it, she transforms in the middle of the city, fights with Eren, fights with Mikasa, gets her ass royally kicked, and is captured by the Survey Corps, who now know definitively she is the female Titan. However, before she can be captured, Annie encases herself in this crystal shell that covers her human body, so that she can't be interrogated or tortured to give up her other infiltrators. Now, at the same time, at the same day, the trap to get Annie sprung, in a different village, Zeke makes a reappearance, having not done anything since the initial attack on Shiganshina, where he didn't even help. He was off doing other stuff. He attacks a town in his Beast Titan form and uses its ability to, on the spot, convert all of the villagers into pure Titans. So as far as I know, this isn't outright said, but I would assume he has been spending his time, since the attack on Shiganshina, going around and mass converting towns into pure Titans. That would, I would think, draw a lot of attention. So I would assume he's been doing it sparingly, and in his off time doing things like investigating the city inside the wall, learning more about it, learning about where the Founding Titan and Attack Titan could be, and things like that. But this is where he makes his grand reappearance as a military force for the operation, converting this town into pure Titans. Now, the next important beat is something I see made fun of quite a bit. It's that at this point in time, the Survey Corps finally caught up on all of the records of family lost in the Shiganshina attack. Which sounds kind of silly that it took them all these years, but in the face of their walls getting cracked and Titans flooding the vast majority of their land area and all of the very real imminent threats to the city, I think it's understandable that paperwork wasn't really the first thing on their minds. I see people call that silly. I don't think it's silly at all. Anyway, they finally catch up on the paperwork of all of the people killed in Shiganshina, and they discover that Annie, Reiner, and Bertholdt's stories don't add up. Their family histories aren't there. It's as if they never lost anyone that they said they did in Shiganshina. This, on top of Annie's capture, points the fingers to Reiner and Bertholdt being Annie's co-conspirators. Now, the next day, knowing that their covers are blown, Reiner and Bertholdt make the very brash decision to just cut their losses and act overtly, forcibly trying to kidnap Eren in their Titan forms. They are nearly stopped by Mikasa and Levi and the rest of the Survey Corps, and when Eren gets the chance, he transforms and does battle with Reiner in his Armor Titan form. However, the battle comes to kind of a stalemate, and Reiner and Bertholdt manage to escape with Zeke's help. After that point, the three of them retreat back to Shiganshina to recalculate their chances and make a new plan. At the same time, now knowing who the infiltrators are, Eren, Mikasa, Armin, Levi, the whole Survey Corps, goes on the offensive and marches on Shiganshina to finally confront the infiltrators that have worked so hard to destroy their city. This event is known as the Battle of Shiganshina, which the initial attack was the attack. This is now the battle. because it's two military forces coming to blows. Once again, Eren, in his Attack Titan form, does battle with Reiner, and ironically enough, using grappling techniques both Reiner and Annie taught him, manages to get the upper hand. However, Zeke intervenes, and doubly however, Levi and Mikasa kick the crap out of him and manage to disable him. Just as it looks like Reiner and... Oh, and also Bertholdt got killed in the middle of that. He got just aced. As it looks like the infiltrators are on their last legs, Pike swoops in to save the day, managing to recover Zeke and Reiner having to leave behind Bertholdt and retreating outright. Oh, and also, I'm sorry I'm alsoing a bunch for this part. There's a lot that goes on here. During the events of the battle, Armin was killed. However, on death's door, in an attempt to save his life, his comrades injected him with pure Titan fluid and then fed him Bertholdt's corpse so that he would, like Ymir before him, become a pure Titan and then become a Titan shifter immediately after, because Titan shifters have miraculous regenerative abilities, able to regrow massive parts of their body and recover from what would otherwise be a guaranteed mortal wound. This is the only way to save Armin's life, is to make him the new inheritor of the Colossal Titan. So, to recap, the infiltrators have failed spectacularly. They have learned very little about what is going on inside the walls and what powers Eren has as a Titan shifter. They lost Annie. They lost the female Titan by extension. They lost Bertholdt. The Colossus Titan is now in the possession of the enemy. And Reiner, Zeke, and Pike are fleeing with their tail between their legs, having accomplished next to nothing. The operation on Paradise Island is a complete failure, and it ends with Eren, as he did in Trost, sealing the breach in the wall caused by Bertholdt in the attack on Shiganshina, and with strenuous efforts afterwards by the Survey Corps to kill the now finite number of Titans inside Wall Maria, the city inside the wall finally has what it had originally: peace from the Titans. Everyone inside Wall Maria is safe once again for the first time in half a decade. And that brings an end to the operation on Paradise Island. It is at this point in the story that we come to the arc I like to call the Operation on Marley. Now, this is typically known in the fandom and official sources as just the Marley arc. I think that's kind of boring. And given that the former arc was the Operation on Paradise Island, and a great deal of this arc we're going into is about the kids of the Walled City going on to fall for some of the same evils of war that the infiltrators did, I think it's very fitting that they be named in reflection of one another. So we're going to refer to this as the Operation on Marley. Now, Pike, Reiner, and Zeke fall back to Marley in defeat. And as you can expect, Marley's not happy about that. Lucky for them, at the same time, another country begins a very short-lived war on Marley. And it's very short-lived because the three infiltrators go on to just join outright combat against this country. And their Titan forms contribute so much to the war effort that not only is the war very short-lived and honestly not that important other than this, it also redeems them in the eyes of Marley and makes them useful once again. Whereas otherwise they would have just been forcefully cannibalized to different child soldiers so that Marley could get some actual use out of the Titan Shifter powers. Instead of that, we have them continuing in their service to Marley. At the same time, Zeke goes to Willie Tybur, the head of the Tybur family. As you remember, the family that was in control of the Warhammer Titan that first seceded to Marley. Zeke goes to Willie, which is a silly name for this character to have. Zeke goes to Willie and convinces him that Paradise Island is still a threat, that it should still be engaged with, just this time with outright conflict and a direct war. All-out, full-scale war. Willie agrees with this, and they begin making arrangements for outright war with Paradise Island to take place. At the same time, back on Paradise Island, Aaron, the rest of the Survey Corps, deliberate on what they find in Aaron's basement. Now, way back right after the attack on Shiganshina, Aaron's father, Grisha, appeared in the refugee camps, took Aaron out to the woods and gave him a key, telling him this key would unlock their basement and that whatever he does, he needs to get back there and get into the basement. In the basement, he will find answers as to what's going on, answers as to what the Titans really are, answers to everything. Why Grisha knows these things and why these secrets are in this basement, we don't know yet, because he dies right after this, and no one knows how. At least not yet. So, after the battle for Shiganshina, and after the Survey Corps drives out the infiltrators, Aaron and his friends reclaim the basement and they reopen it. Inside, they find multiple things. They find tiny paintings that could never be made by a human hand. And they find a drink that's like tea, but like it's brewed, but it's really bitter. They are finding photographs and coffee and other things that are technology far beyond anything the city inside the walls has ever produced. They also find 3 journals written by Grisha. These journals are about civilization outside the walls and their history, the history of the Titans, and Grisha's personal life. The first 2 are covering basically all of the material I started the video with, from Ymir, how Titans came to be, and the history of Eldia and its history of conquering and waging war against all of its neighbors with the power of the Titans. Now, the 3rd book is of particular interest to us, as it covers Grisha's life outside the walls, where he was one of the Eldian second-class citizens in Marley, and how he came to be in Paradise Island. All of which is very important, so we're going to cover it. So, as I said, Grisha was at one point one of the second-class Eldian citizens in Marley. When Marley began recruiting children for the Paradise Island operation, Grisha made sure his son would be in the selection for those children. Grisha was a part of an underground resistance movement against Marley, looking to reinstate Eldia. And he wanted an inside man with the operatives of this operation, both so that he could potentially sabotage it, so that he could learn more about the Marleyan higher-ups, anything that that position could lean for the resistance Grisha went in on. Grisha at this point had a son named Zeke with a woman named Dina Frisk, who was a descendant of the original Frisk family and her ancestor 100 years prior when King Carl retreated to Paradise Island. Dina and her branch of the family, Dina hadn't been born yet, but her branch of the family decided to stay. This was a horrible choice because all of their descendants have since lived in horrible, horrible poverty and suffering under the control of Marley. Dina being a member of the royal family is important in significant ways later on. But anyway, Grisha has a son with Dina named Zeke, who is obviously the Zeke we were talking about during the operation. Grisha and Zeke's relationship strains as he prepares his son to join the ranks of these child soldiers, as he puts a very significant amount of pressure on Zeke to succeed at this, and it looks like Zeke may not be up to the task. Very foolishly, the young child Zeke ousts his father and their fellow revolutionaries to the Marleyan government in an attempt to stop his dad from being such a revolutionary so they can have a normal life together. This does not work. I don't blame Zeke at all for making that choice. He was like 5 years old at the time. Grisha, Dina, all the revolutionaries are captured and shipped off to Paradise Island. Now, all throughout his revolutionary operations, Grisha has been in contact with a mole named the Owl, a mysterious man that has been helping the revolutionaries. When they get to Paradise Island, Grisha's fellow revolutionaries start getting injected with Titan serum and pushed over to become pure Titans to terrorize the Eldians. Just as Grisha is about to be Titanized, one of the soldiers turns on the others and kills them. This man's name is Eren Kruger, and he is the Owl who has been helping the Eldian resistance. He reveals to Grisha why he didn't intervene until then, because Dina, being a member of the royal family, would be highly coveted by the Marleyans for horrific scientific breeding Titan power shenanigans that they've been doing with the other royal houses, and he figured it was better for her to just die as a Titan than to be subjected to that. He also reveals to Grisha his goal, his mission as a revolutionary. Eren Kruger is at the time carrying the Attack Titan. He is a Titan shifter. However, he only has a certain amount of time to live. You see, way back when the original Ymir was first killed, she was killed 13 years after she initially gained her powers. As a result, an effect called the Curse of Ymir befalls all Titan shifters that come after her. They can only live a maximum amount of 13 years after receiving their powers. Eren Kruger is nearing the end of his time limit. He will be dead within the next year because of the Curse of Ymir, if anything else, and he needs someone to carry on his mission, and Grisha is his only option. His mission is, like Marley, to resecure the founding and both the founding Titan and keep his own Attack Titan secure so that they can be used to subjugate the other Titan shifters and turn them on Marley, basically redoing what the Fritz family first did well over centuries prior. Grisha takes this up because he hates Marley, and the chance to have super weapons that could rival them just really gets to him, and he's down with that. So he cannibalizes Eren Kruger, takes on the Attack Titan, and goes onto Paradise Island looking to infiltrate the population so that he can basically do his own version of the operation on Paradise that the infiltrators were all. But instead of violently causing disruption to infiltrate, he's just going to be a part of the civilian population and do it quietly and peacefully. Now, once he gets into the population, Grisha makes a living as a doctor, which was his profession back in Marley, and he works hard to cure a plague that strikes the Shiganshina. I have a speech impediment, cut me some slack. The Shiganshina town, where he meets Carla, who will go on to be Eren's mother once they get married. Now, it is important to note, once again, that paths can carry images and memories and whatnot, both from the past and from the future. That's going to become very important to Grisha soon. So, Grisha makes a living in Shiganshina as a doctor, raising his family, just living a peaceful life. Once Eren reaches his adolescence / later boyhood, he starts getting really passionate about potentially joining the Survey Corps and helping fight back the Titans. This reignites Grisha's lust for revolution and his desire to fight Marley. It seems as if he was willing to just give up his mission at a certain point, that he was happy with his family and just didn't care. But hearing Eren talk about these things reminds Grisha of his patriotism, reminds him of all the people he's lost in his life up until then, all the compatriots that died when they first arrived, his wife that was murdered in front of him, his sister that was murdered by Marley. It reminds him of all of that, and he decides to take up his mission once again. Having gotten close to the nobility of the walled city as a doctor, he knew full well where the royal family was. The royal family seen by the populace was just a fake puppet put in place to obfuscate the real royal family, who were now known as the Rice family, R-E-I-S-S, Rice family. They were living as a minor noble house on the outskirts of the capital, not really important, trying to lay low and stay hidden. Grisha knew full well who they were and where to find them, and shows up at their chapel demanding for them to help him. He has received visions of the future, the imminent future, of the Shiganshina attack by the infiltrators, and he begs the Rice family to use the Founding Titan's power to stop the attack, to save his family, and to undo the future he has seen. However, the Rice family refuses. They believe full well in Karl Fritz's vision and ideals, that Eldia is evil and needs to repent for what it's done, and they need to not counter-aggress against the world's punishment for their nation's history. Grisha doesn't like that. He doesn't like that one bit, so he turns into the Attack Titan and starts attacking them. Grisha is spurned on by the image of a young man he can't fully identify that appears to him as a vision, who this young man will turn out to be Eren. We know this to be Eren later on in the future because we recognize him, but at the time, Grisha has no idea who this is. It just looks vaguely like his son. Grisha finds the girl that is currently the carrier of the Founding Titan and eats her. Now, for the first time in the series, since Ymir originally and her daughters, one person is carrying multiple Titan shifter powers. Grisha has both the Attack Titan and the Founding Titan, which, if you're wondering what makes the Attack Titan special, like I said, it has nothing to do with any kind of offensive ability. It's called that because that's what Eren will inherit later on, and is first seen counter-attacking against the Titans attacking Trost. So that's why it's called the Attack Titan. Its actual ability is that it is much more attuned to paths and the reception of memories than almost anything else related to the Eldians. And whoever carries the Attack Titan not only has the ability to actively select and receive memories from future or past users, but can also impact themselves upon past or future events, as we will see be done with other users of the Titan. Grisha's not really concerned with all that. He doesn't even know about all that. All he knows is he's seeing crazy shit that he can't fully explain. So, while Grisha is securing the Founding Titan, Shiganshina is attacked, his wife is killed, his son runs away, and he later finds him in a refugee camp. Grisha takes Eren out into the woods and tells him all about the basement, gives him the key, and while apologizing profusely, tells Eren about the destiny about to befall him. But Eren doesn't remember any of that because Grisha injects him with Titan serum to make him a pure Titan, and then feeds himself to his son, so Eren can inherit both the Attack Titan and the Founding Titan. At this point, Eren is like 5 years old, maybe 6 or 7 at the most, and he is the most powerful man in the world. Which, all the tragedy of losing his parents and his home and all that aside, is kind of funny to think about. It also ties back to, like I said during the Battle of Trost, how if the infiltrators knew what they were looking at, they could have just kicked Eren's ass, since he didn't have any control over his powers or anything, abducted him then, and the operation on Paradise Island would have been a raging success. They didn't know that. They had no way of knowing he was carrying both of the Titan shifter powers they were looking for at the time, and that sucks for them. But this is the history of Eren and his father leading up to the Battle of Shiganshina, or the attack on Shiganshina, I'm sorry, and the aftermath thereof. Grisha lives his life a rebel and a very sad man overall. He loses 2 whole families until he dies at his own son's hands in this plan to pass on the Titan powers to hopefully unseat Marley at some point in the future. This is all found in the basement. All of Grisha's life, all of the history of Eldia, all the history of the Titans, all of this technology that's unique to the outside world. The fact that there is an outside world. All these people have spent all their lives thinking they were the only humans left and the rest of the world was just barren and totally destroyed by the Titans. And now they know there's a whole world that not only exists but hates them. It really sucks to be an Eldian right now. After all of these discoveries, the leadership of the city deliberates on what to do. Eren receives a vision during a medal award ceremony for the efforts in the Battle of Shiganshina. He receives a vision upon touching Historia Rice, who is the official queen of the Eldians. Touching her gives him a vision of the future, where he activates the Founding Titan and activates the Titans in the walls, leading them to destroy most of humanity beyond. Which is very heavy and a lot to deal with. So Eren, on top of just processing that, and on top of fear that knowledge of the Founding Titan's existence and how it can be triggered by contact with a member of the royal family, makes him fearful that Historia will be dragged into all of these Titan shenanigans related to the war, and to both protect her and come to grips with himself, knowing he's a walking weapon of mass destruction. Eren just kind of keeps that to himself for a while. Now, another point to take note of is that Zeke is also on the side of the Eldians. You might remember he was working with Willy Tybur to convince him to attack Paradise Island. He is actually a double agent. He is pushing Wiley to do that because it is a terrible move and would weaken Marley significantly. And he is also working predominantly for the Eldians and for their sake. It is important to note that he, at this point, has had his Beast Titan for a very long time and is approaching his 13-year limit. Another reason Eren keeps his vision to himself is he is afraid Historia will be given the Beast Titan so that both she can be of use to the war effort and he and her can work in conjunction, both fighting literally as Titans and activating the Founding Titan's power to control Titans and do all of the crazy shit the Founding Titan is capable of. However, Eren does not want that to happen. He wants Historia to be safe. He doesn't want anyone else that doesn't need to become a Titan shifter. At this point, he is approaching the halfway mark of his Titan ownership. Armin has just been saved by taking up the Colossus Titan, so his hourglass was just turned over. His time limit has just started, and Mikasa is coming to grips with the fact that her 2 best friends, her only family in the world, now have very finite lifespans. Well, everyone has a finite lifespan, but theirs significantly more so. In the wake of all of that, he doesn't want anyone else having to deal with that, so he keeps it to himself, fearful that Historia will be chosen as the next Beast Titan. Now, Zeke comes up with a plan to have someone infiltrate Marley and use their Titan shifting abilities to assassinate Willy Tybur and to just overall disrupt Marley from the inside, the way the infiltrators had in Paradise Island when they broke the walls. Being the gung-ho revolutionary that he is and wanting revenge on Marley, Eren volunteers for this mission. He goes and infiltrates Marley, disguising himself as one of the Eldian second-class citizens, and most importantly giving himself very grievous wounds, gouging out one of his eyes and cutting off one of his legs, knowing that he can, at a later date, use his Titan shifting powers to just regenerate them. But it helps him in the time present sell his story of being an Eldian soldier who was fighting for Marley until he got injured. At an event called the Tiber Festival, Eren meets with Reiner, who obviously recognizes him. Reiner says he is sorry for all the things he's done. He regrets all the choices he made. He regrets all the pain and suffering he caused. And he begs Eren to kill him because he feels like that's what he deserves. Eren refuses that request. Very politely, actually. For the man responsible for his mom's death, partly. Eren is honestly kind of nice to him. Eren then goes on to say that he has grown a great deal of sympathy for the infiltrators because now being in a very similar position, infiltrating Marley, befriending Marleyans, seeing that they are not all evil, but still having this mission he has to carry out for the sake of his own people, Eren starts to get a little bit of insight as to how Reiner and the other infiltrators must have felt. And he expresses that sympathy before transforming into a Titan and assassinating Willy Tiber in public in front of everybody. Which, like, holy shit. The owner of the Warhammer Titan, Laura Tiber, goes to stop him. However, mid-transformation into the Warhammer Titan, Eren attacks her, which I just really want to shout out Attack on Titan. Us anime fans, we always make fun of the trope of that guy's transforming or doing his big power-up, why aren't you smacking him now? And mid-immersion of her Titan form, Eren just slam dunks her and gets a ton of damage in before the fight even starts. It's great, I love it. The fight with the Warhammer Titan is very bloody and violent and hard fought. Like I said before and have said multiple times now, it is known as the Warhammer Titan because its go-to strategy is to use its power to manifest a massive long warhammer. However, that is not the extent of its power. The Warhammer Titan carries Ymir's power to shape and shift the earth. So it touches the earth and pulls and draws its warhammer out. That's not the limit of its power. It can do whatever it wants with earth. It conjures armor, it conjures these spikes that stab and lock Eren down. It does all sorts of crazy shit with its powers. It's just known as the Warhammer Titan because that's obviously the most cutting part of its image. As the fight drags on, Eren comes to the conclusion that the Warhammer Titan's user is not sitting in the nape of the neck as most Titan shifters do. When a person becomes a Titan, either as a shifter or as a pure Titan, their main human body sits in the back of their neck, right at where the neck meets the shoulders. When someone goes to kill a pure Titan, that's where they cut. That kills a pure Titan because they are destroying the body of the person in there, killing them, and by extension killing the Titan. Pure or Titan shifters are also vulnerable there because that's where their actual human body typically sits. Eren deduces that the Warhammer Titan's user is not there, based on how it forms. It forms feet first, leading him to believe that the user is somewhere either on or in the ground. With Mikasa's help distracting it, Eren sees where a thin line of Titan flesh is connecting to the ground from the Warhammer Titan, deduces that must be where the user is, and reaches into the earth and rips out the crystal that is holding Laura Tiber. In the same way Annie's crystal is protecting her, Laura has done the same here, only she is doing it so she can remotely pilot her Titan without actually being in its body. At this point, the Jaw Titan joins the fray. Ymir at this point has been captured and was fed to a new person. If you'll remember Marcel Galliard, this is his brother who has now inherited the Jaw Titan from Ymir rather forcibly. It's kind of grisly. The Jaw Titan joins the fray, and in defending himself against it, Eren uses Laura Tiber to block one of its attacks and notices that its claws are capable of gouging the crystal she is housed in. This leads him to make a plan with Mikasa where she disables the Jaw Titan such that it is left paralyzed, and before it can heal, Eren takes its jaws and uses them as kind of like a nutcracker to crack open the crystal and then eat Laura Tiber. This means Eren is in possession of the Founding Titan, the Attack Titan, and now the Warhammer Titan. With one of the Titan Shifters claimed, with a great deal of their objectives accomplished, Eren, Mikasa, and the Survey Corps, which had arrived to reinforce him, all retreat back to Paradise Island. On the way, the Survey Corps grow very upset with Eren because they took a lot of sacrifices for this mission and don't particularly like the way he's just flippantly accepting that, saying that it's worth it. We struck a great blow against Marley. This is what we're here to fight for. We've accomplished what we needed to. Soldiers die in war. This is perfectly fine. He doesn't seem particularly upset to lose his comrades, and they take that personally. In response to this, they lock him up in the brig of the airship that is carrying them back to Paradise Island. It's also important to note in that sequence of events that Eren somewhat lied and misled both people that are technically his military superiors and his friends. Like, it's not just to say Levi, Hangazoe, Mikasa, Armin especially. These are people that he should consider his friends, and he lied and used them and got some of them killed to accomplish these objectives, and he doesn't seem particularly fazed by that at all. So their response of, "You're a crazy bastard, we're going to lock you up," that seems fitting. I don't blame them. I don't blame them for that at all. So with most of their military objectives, oh my god. With most of their military objectives accomplished, the operation on Marley ends with the Survey Corps successful overall. From a military standpoint, this was a successful operation, retreating back to Paradise Island. And that marks the end of the third out of 4 arcs in the story. We now come to the last leg of the narrative, which I will simply call the rumbling. You can barely see it in this lighting, and my green marker is my lightest. I'm sorry, I did my best here. But it is called the rumbling. Aboard the airship, Eren escapes from his cell using the Warhammer Titan's powers, growing obstructions that break his bars and block off his route of escape so that his former comrades can't chase him down. Once he escapes, he makes contact with a group of soldiers that call themselves the Jaegerists, people that agree with his ideals, that these sacrifices are necessary, that they are willing to do anything to usurp Marley and re-establish Eldia as a world power. Given that Eren was more than willing to take advantage of his lifelong friends, he is also more than willing to take advantage of these schmucks that bought into his idealistic nonsense, and together they all escape. Later on, Eren catches word that Armin, Mikasa, Hangazoe, and a couple other Survey Corps members are at a restaurant back in, I want to assume, back on Paradise Island, given that's where they were heading. They're meeting at a restaurant trying to reconvene and make a new plan for where to go next, where Eren and his Jaegerists ambush them, take Hangazoe and the others captive, and he sits alone with Armin and Mikasa. Armin asks if Zeke or anyone else is holding influence on Eren, and Eren specifies that no, these are all his plans. He is acting of his own volition and in his own right mind. To flip the tables back on him, Eren accuses Armin of being influenced by Bertholdt's memories of the Colossal Titan, because he is more than aware of Armin's frequent visits to the crystallized, imprisoned Annie. At the same time, Mikasa rises to defend Armin, and Eren shuts her down by revealing something he learned from Zeke about the Ackerman clan, whom Mikasa hails from. He reveals that the Ackermans are a result of Marleyan experimentation with Titans on humans. The reason Mikasa and Levi are so powerful is they still carry in their bodies the effects of these experiments, granting them greatly increased strength, speed, and reflexes, on par with what you would see in someone who becomes a Titan, but still keeping their human forms. That is what Zeke revealed to Eren. And when Eren asked Zeke if Mikasa's headaches are related to it, Zeke answered, "I have no idea." However, here in the present, in this meeting with Armin and Mikasa, Eren claims that Mikasa's headaches are the result of the Ackermans being wired to functionally be mental slaves, that they rely on a person giving them an order to activate these powers, and from then on out, they are a slave to the whims of that person. This is supposedly demonstrated when Armin takes offense to this and goes to hit Eren, but Mikasa defends him on reflex. Eren claims this is evidence that Mikasa is owned, for lack of a better word, by Eren because of the programming in the Ackerman clan. He claims that back when they were children and Mikasa was kidnapped and Eren went to save her, and they were both cornered by her kidnappers, and Eren commanded her to fight, Mikasa activated her powers then with the super strength far beyond anything a 7-year-old girl should be capable of in that incident. Eren is now claiming that ever since then, Mikasa has been his mental slave due to the Ackerman programming. That's why she cares about him so much. That's why she wants to protect him. That's why she does everything he says. It is important to note, this is all horse shit. It is all... Zeke never told him any of this. No one anywhere else in the narrative ever corroborates this. Zeke only told Eren the Ackermans were the product of Titan experimentation on humans, and they have slightly superhuman abilities because of that. All this shit about mental programming and whatnot, that he's made all of that up. Why he did that, I honestly have no idea. I think he's doing it as a part of his overall grander plan that we'll see later on, which involves driving a wedge between himself and the rest of the Eldians. But that's just an assumption. Right now, it just looks like he's being a huge dick. The meeting between the three doesn't end with particularly good terms, and Eren just kind of takes everyone prisoner. After this, Pike, the Cart Titan, reveals herself to Eren from among his followers. Given that no one amongst the audience has ever seen her face, no one would ever recognize her, making her the perfect person to infiltrate his Jaegerists for the Marleyans. But she comes forward saying very flatly, "The Marleyans sent me as a spy, but I really believe in your cause and I want to join you sincerely." I feel like this is an important time to interject with why she's called the Cart Titan. During the operation on Paradis Island, while the three infiltrators were in society, in the training corps, in their various military branches operating, Zeke was doing his thing as the Beast Titan. Pike had spent the entirety of this time almost 24/7 in Titan form with a massive cart that she would corral pure Titans into and then ferry them closer to the walls before dropping them off covertly and then running away. And this created the illusion that there were far, far more pure Titans out in the wilds beyond the walls than there actually were, and created more pressure as these pure Titans flooded through the gap in Wall Maria to flood the interior of the wall. That's why she's called the Cart Titan. And I just want to point out that these capabilities... Oh, also, during the war with that whatever the hell it was, small country that she lived for a short while. She was carrying around a massive, massive artillery gun and just blowing shit up. Like, while the Beast Titan was hurling rocks as projectiles and making Pure Titans, and Reiner as the Armor Titan was smashing into things, Pike was wielding the power of gun and just blasting shit left and right. But anyway, that's why she's called the Cart Titan. Her primary use is her raw endurance. Both her physical endurance in Titan form and her ability to stay in Titan form for great periods of time. It seems kind of goofy and mundane, like, oh, she can ferry around Pure Titans in large numbers or carry around this big artillery gun, compared to being a giant, armored, unkillable man, or an even more gianter man. It seems kind of mundane. Given that logistics and continuous pressure like this are the single most important parts of a military campaign, the level of actual tangible power Pike wields for the sake of a military, as a military asset, cannot be understated. And I'm just interjecting that now because it's kind of important to why the Cart Titan. It sounds so goofy. It sounds so silly. It's actually cooler and more of a big deal than you would think based on that name. Anyway, moving on from that. Eren and the other Jaegers don't fully trust Pike, and they shouldn't, because she's about to backstab them. Despite not fully earning their trust, she does manage to lure Eren out into the open. And here, Reiner, as the Armor Titan, and the Jaw Titan ambush him and start doing battle with him in this 2v1 throwdown. At the same time, the Marleyan military comes to reinforce them with anti-Titan artillery pieces. So, despite Eren having 3 different Titan powers, between facing 2 different opponents and having anti-Titan artillery specifically raining down on him, the overall pressure of the fight starts to tilt against his favor. That is until Zeke shows up as the Beast Titan and reinforces him, helping drive back the Armored Titan and the Jaw Titan. This almost works, and to trigger the Founding Titan's ability, Eren runs to meet with Zeke. If he can touch Zeke, who is a son of Dina Fritz, one of the royal family, he can trigger the Founding Titan's power, take control of both the Armor and Jaw Titan, and turn them against the Marleyans. However, a lucky shot by the anti-Titan artillery blows Eren's head off. In the biggest stroke of luck in the entire series, Zeke dives and catches Eren's head, making contact with him before full biological death takes over, and the two are transported to a coordinate via the paths by their contact and activation of the Founding Titan. Now, Zeke arrives first. He arrives first because despite grievous injuries, he didn't have his whole ass head blown off. So he is more intact and he comes to first. In the coordinate, he meets with Ymir, the original Ymir, who has spent over 2,000 years living in the coordinate as this kind of phantom memory echo thing that's not fully elaborated on, but she's been living inside the paths, specifically in coordinates. It is revealed that she is both the source of the Titan Shifter powers and also the source of the mass that composes Titan bodies. Anytime a Titan Shifter injures themselves and the lightning strikes and they grow their body, or anytime someone gets injected with the serum and they grow into a pure Titan, that mass is coming from Ymir in the coordinates. She is sculpting the earth of this transcendental realm to forge these Titan bodies and supply the mass that makes them. every time a Titan Shifter heals and regenerates their body, that flesh is being made by Ymir in the coordinate, and Zeke awakens to her repairing his body. After getting done with him, she also repairs Eren, who also comes to. Eren finds Zeke bound in chains, and after asking about what the coordinate is and who this little girl is, to which Zeke explains coordinates and Ymir, Zeke then also explains that the chains are the vow sworn by Karl Fritz when he decided he was never going to retaliate against the rest of the world. This vow, because of the power of the Founding Titan, propagates across every single Eldian, such that none of them can ever use the Founding Titan against Marley. Zeke reveals, Eren has known this for a while, but he reveals to us, the viewer, that his plan is for the mass extinction of all Eldians. He has done everything he has done. He has orchestrated both sides of this war. He has manipulated everybody he knows. He has done all of this to get the Founding Titan into the coordinate with Ymir, so that he can use its power to order Ymir to sterilize all Eldians, as their progenitor. Affecting her would carry the effect down the line in the same way the curse of Ymir does, and how the paths connect them all. The effect would be carried by the paths to all Eldians, such that they would never be able to have more children, and within a lifetime they would die out. Zeke believes, not out of guilt like the way Karl Fritz and the Rice family did. Zeke believes that this is the only way to achieve world peace. This isn't a penitent thing. He doesn't believe it's atonement for Eldia's sins. He believes that Eldia as the big bad of the world, the boogeyman everyone fears. If Eldia is removed from the picture, that will bring about at least some level of world peace. That's kind of silly. Marley just horribly curb-stomped a different country in a very brief war that had nothing to do with Eldia. So that's a thing. But anyway, he asks Eren to fulfill this plan. Eren refuses, revealing that he never planned on following through on Zeke's mass sterilization plan, and the two fight over Ymir. Not literally, just like ideologically, they argue about it. To try and sway Eren, Zeke makes him use the Attack Titan's power to go back and see their father in the past. This is where Grisha saw visions of his sons from the future when we were observing his life through his journals, when he saw Eren while massacring the Rice family, when he saw Zeke while he was in the basement writing these journals, which, during this vision, as a user of the Attack Titan as well, Grisha can see Zeke and Eren the same way they can see him, and Grisha, having long thought he would never see Zeke again, tearfully apologizes for how awful of a father he was, and profusely claims that he loved Zeke so much. He loved both of his families so much, and if he could have done anything different, he would have just lived a happy, peaceful life with his sons, where they didn't have to engage in any of this. Which is very sweet and comforting and very short-lived, unfortunately. We come back to the present, where Zeke and Eren need to resolve their argument about Ymir and what to do, with Zeke wanting to sterilize all Eldians to wipe them from the map, and Eren wanting the full power of the Founding Titan to enact his plan to destroy all of the world that isn't Eldian. Zeke orders Ymir to do it, whereas Eren requests her to, recognizing her humanity, that she was not a god like the Eldians came to worship her, and not a slave the way the older Eldians treated her. She's just a little girl. She's just a person. And for the first time in her life, someone gives her the respect of a person by asking her to do something and offering her agency. Because of that, Ymir takes Aaron's side, rejects Zeke, and gives Aaron the full power of the Founding Titan without any need to touch a royal family member or anything like that. Zeke awakens back where Aaron and the Armored Titan and the Jaw Titan, all of that, where that battle had gone down, and Levi executes him. Zeke, recognizing he has no time left to try and fix this or to get ahead of things, and just peacefully accepts his death, with his last thoughts being about how it's a nice day, and he should have taken more time to appreciate things like that. Which is very sad. Cry about it. I don't feel a whole lot of sympathy for Zeke. I do feel sympathy for him in that Grisha was a dick to him, and he was forced to be a child soldier and all that stuff. But he was also a horrible, horrible war crime monster. So it kind of evens out as far as my sympathy goes. Anyway, we are approaching the last leg of our story. Aaron comes to from the coordinate where he had met Ymir, back in Shiganshina, back on Paradise Island. He pops off the powers of the Founding Titan and shakes loose the walls, awakening all of the Colossal Titans within. His plan being he will unleash them on the rest of the world, destroying everything that isn't Eldian. This event he calls the Rumbling. It's title drop. Anyway. Almost everyone recognizes this is horrible, including the Eldians, like Armin, Mikasa, the rest of the Survey Corps. None of them want that. They all are looking for a way to stop him. However, Aaron uses his power over the paths to astral projection appear with each of his friends and reveals to them his actual plan. See, his rumbling and the eradication of everything on the rest of the world and all that, that's just a farce. That's just a bluff. His actual plan is to make himself into the epitome of everything the rest of the world hates about Eldia. The power of the Titans, the conquest, the war crimes, all of it. He is going to become this massive, massive hated figure, so that when the rest of the Eldians, like the Survey Corps, when they defeat him, that will quench the thirst for revenge that drove Marley and the other countries to hate the Eldians, even a century after Karl Fritz stopped the conquest of Eldia over the rest of the world. When his friends point out that that can't last for forever, like things are still going to come to blows, Aaron points out that in his vision of the future, the Rumbling kills 80% of all human life beyond Paradise Island, meaning that none of the other countries after the Rumbling will be in any state to counterattack and take vengeance on Eldia if they see it as such, which they won't, because he's gone out of his way to make it appear as if he is a lone actor with his Jaegerist and his breaking away from his arrest and all of that. To the rest of the world, it looks as if he is a lone terrorist cell, not representative of Eldia proper. And when Eldia snuffs him out, that will redeem them in the eyes of the rest of the world. So that even if someone bears any kind of ill will towards Eldia, which they most likely won't because of that, they won't have the manpower to do anything about it. And in this period of peace afterwards, his friends have the groundwork to go out and generate as much peace through treaties and diplomacy as possible with the rest of the world. That is his ultimate plan. This is what it has all come down to. Aaron becoming, by his own will, a sacrificial figure to redeem Eldia to the rest of the world by dying on Eldia's sword in battle. This leads to a very climactic battle where Aaron, as a massive, massive titan, leading the Wall Titans in their destruction of the rest of the world, conjures up the forms of previous Titan owners, like Bertholdt's Colossal Titan to do battle with Armin's, even though Bertholdt's dead, and Annie's female Titan to do battle with them, even though Annie is... I believe at this point Annie has come out of her crystal and escaped. She's not particularly relevant to the narrative now, so that's why I didn't mention it, but she is either still in her crystal, or by this point she has escaped. I forget which. She's not important now. The point being, he is throwing the former forms of Titan Shifter users at the Survey Corps to really sell the battle. They do battle with his Titans. Mikasa closes in and gets into the Founding Titan's mouth, where she finds Eren and decapitates him. And this ends the rumbling. Mikasa then goes on to create a grave for Eren, assumingly where she buried his body, underneath the tree that he was seen napping under in the very first episode / chapter. We then see her have a little moment of silence with him, and then we flash forward several decades to Mikasa having a family of her own with a husband and children, and they still visit Eren's grave. The exact meaning of that, whether they're paying respects to him for his sacrifice, or she remembers him as this first love / childhood friend, and that still means something to her, or some mix of those things, or whatever. Even years later, she and her family still visit his grave, assumedly implying the government of Eldia is still in power, at least as far as Paradis Island is concerned. Like, since that site hasn't been bulldozed or bombed to hell, I'm assuming to a certain extent Eren's plan worked, and the rest of the world never came and enacted vengeance upon Eldia from Paradis Island for what it had done in the past. To at least some extent, his plan worked, and the rest of the world kind of finally let go of their grudges against Eldia, and in the wake of all this destruction, just sat chill with each other. That's the lesson to take away, kids. If you want world peace, become a giant flesh monster and kill most of humanity. That is the end. That's the end. That's the end of Attack on Titan. Eren sacrifices himself for world peace. Mikasa buries his body under a tree, the tree that was important to their childhoods, and goes on to lead, assumedly, a happy life, building a life with a family where she can live peacefully in Shiganshina and regularly pay her respects to her lost friend. That is very sweet. That is... like I just made fun of, it's kind of... There's a point to be made about world peace being achieved by giant flesh monsters and the destruction of most of humanity. That goes a little... The implications of that being the lesson of your story... That's a thing to discuss. But overall, I think for the characters in this very character-driven story, this is a somber, sweet, meaningful ending. The only thing I would really change is with the impact of paths on the series and the nature of memories and events in the future and the past being intermingled. At the very beginning of the series, Eren is sleeping under that tree as a child, and he has a nightmare that is actually visions of all the awful things happening in the future, both the attack on Shiganshina and other stuff, and he is very suddenly awoken by Mikasa standing over him. We then have the very last scene of the series, where Mikasa, decades in the future with her family, is quietly paying respects at Eren's grave and sheds a tear. When Eren died, Ymir let go and finally moved on to whatever afterlife is present. She moved on from the coordinate. The Titan shifter powers left the world. Titans left the world. All pure Titans everywhere across the globe reverted to their normal human forms and were saved from the curse of being pure Titans. The implication of that would be that paths no longer exist because that connection between the Eldians stemmed from Ymir. So it doesn't make sense, but I would have really liked it. I would have really liked it if the tear Mikasa sheds at the very end of the series was what woke up Eren at the very beginning of the series. If our last shots were Mikasa as this grown middle-aged woman shedding a tear and then it falls on young Eren's face, waking him up in a duplication of the very first shots. That would have been so fucking cool. That would have been the best. Like, this ending, I know I said at the beginning I wasn't going to talk about how I felt. I lied. I'm going to talk about how I feel. I am fine with this ending. It is satisfactory. It has some hiccups that I can make a video talking about. I don't really want to. I don't want to rain on the parade that is people celebrating the series in the wake of its conclusion. I don't want to say anything negative about it. There are things I would harp on, but I'm not going to. This ending would have been elevated from fitting and I can accept it to the coolest thing ever if they had played that card and had Mikasa's tear be what woke up Eren. That would have been fantastic. That's my only real feeling that I want to evoke and share in the wake of the conclusion, is I would have loved that. But even without that, I think this ending is perfectly fitting for the series. I think it ties up loose ends the way it should. And we're here. We made it. The end of Attack on Titan. It has been quite a ride. I had a blast. I hope you had a blast. If you've been here from the beginning, I hope you've enjoyed every step of the way as much as I have, and as much as the rest of the fandom has. Everyone's losing their minds and talking about how much they love the series. If you haven't partaken in the series, if somehow my video is your first time interacting with one of the biggest media properties on the planet, please let me know. That would make my day. I strongly doubt that would be the case for anybody, but if it is, please tell me. But anyway, if you haven't partaken in this series, if you haven't read it or watched it, I highly recommend it. I really do. Fully taking in everything the series is, my minor gripes with it, and all the story beats we hit, I do really like this series. I think it is fantastic. I think it is worth your time. And if you've watched this far into the video, you have decided I am worth your time. And I appreciate that. Thank you. My name is Elliot Geltz. This has been the complete timeline of Attack on Titan. And we're here. Thank you for sharing this with me. And I will see you later.